Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we'll be taking the sewing version of the tutorial I posted earlier this week. You've seen the inspiration and you've also seen the outcome. So let's just begin today's tutorial. The first thing I'm going to do is to cut out all the patterns we drafted in our last video on fabric. I got a piece of fabric, folded it in half, and I placed my basic sleeve pattern on top. I went ahead to pin it down. I marked 1 inch by the side, 1 inch by the other side as well, and I took half an inch at the sleeve head. Okay, I didn't add any hemming allowance because I already added that to the pattern, and I went ahead to cut out just as shown. Like I said, 1 inch allowance at the side, half an inch at the sleeve head, and 1 inch at the other side. Like I said, I did not add any hemming allowance because I already added that to my pattern, and I added 1 inch. Okay, so the next thing I did was to cut out both the back and the front pattern. I folded a piece of fabric into two. I placed my front pattern at the edge because I'm supposed to cut the front pattern on fold. Okay, and I went ahead to pin it down. After pinning it down, I added half an inch seam allowance at the top. One important tip will be to note all the slash and spread points because we will need it for later. So use your pencils to mark all the slash and spread points, or your fabric pen, whatever you have, just use it to note that point. It is very important. I added half an inch at the armhole. Okay, I added 1 inch at the side, and I added half an inch at the hem area, and finally I added 0.25 or a quarter of an inch at this opening area. Okay, you just need a very little allowance at that point. Then I went ahead to pin the back pattern. After pinning the back pattern, I added 1 inch at the side, half an inch at the armhole area, half an inch at the shoulder area, half an inch at the hemline. Then for the zipper allowance, I decided to also use 1 inch. So I marked 1 inch at the zipper area. Ensure that your zipper allowance follows the exact shape at the back, okay? The next step is to cut out exactly what we've marked out, just as shown. At this point, I realized that I haven't added my 0.5 inch allowance at the back neckline, so I went ahead to do that. After cutting out all the patterns on the main fabric, I went ahead to trace out exactly what I've just cut out on the lining piece. It's just very easy. Just trace out what you cut out on your main fabric on the lining piece. Okay. After cutting out the lining, the next step will be to transfer all your darts from pattern to fabric. Before transferring my dart, I went ahead to iron stay on my lining fabric just to give it more stability. In order to transfer my dart, what I do is to pass pins through the dart legs. Okay, and as soon as I'm done passing my pins through the dart legs, I'm going to flip it over and take note of the point where the pins came out at the other side. So I'll just note it with my pencil or fabric pen, as the case may be. I won't really dwell so much on how to mark and take in your dart because I've done that a lot on this channel. Okay, so do not forget to also mark your dart on the lining piece. Just mark your dart on every piece possible. After marking all your dart on the main fabric and on the lining piece, the next step will be to head over to your sewing machine to take in all your dart, which I have done. After you've taken in all your dart, the next step is to flip your front pattern right side facing up. Then you place your back pattern right side facing the front side, obviously, and you pin it down because we're about to stitch our side seam with the 1 inch allowance we added. Okay, what I was just basically trying to do is to pin the front and the back right sides facing each other so that I can head over to my sewing machine to stitch using the 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, so at this point I was stitching my 1 inch allowance, so I will do that for the other side as well. After stitching the main fabric, I would repeat the same steps for the lining piece. I'll place the lining piece right sides facing each other and I would stitch my 1 inch seam allowance. As soon as I'm done stitching my 1 inch allowance, I am going to place both the lining piece and the main fabric right sides facing each other. Okay, the next step will be to stitch the hemline with 0.5 inch seam allowance. I'm going to place the main fabric and the lining fabric right sides facing each other, and I'm going to pin the hem area. Whilst pinning the hem area, I am going to ensure that all the seams match. So whilst pinning, ensure all the seams match on both the main fabric and the lining piece. At this point, I'm going to go ahead to stitch using 0.5 inch seam allowance, but there's one important thing I forgot and I had to run through the stitch again. That is to use your hemming gum. Okay, it makes all the difference when you are done ironing. At this point, I had to run through my stitch again, this time using the hemming gum. Okay, this hemming gum is going to make all the difference when you flip to the right side and you iron. It's going to allow everything rest properly. Okay, after stitching, the next step will be to notch and trim off all excess allowance, and this opening at this point is the most important area you would need to notch. Okay, if you don't notch it well, when you flip it to the right side, it's going to look funny. Okay, so notch it properly. So with the help of the notch and the hemming gum, everything will rest perfectly. Okay, the next step is to cut out the shoulder area for the front pattern. If you remember, the shoulder area is twisted and we are going to cut it on fold. So what I went ahead to do is to fold a piece of fabric first. Then I used my pattern paper to determine the exact quantity of fabric I would need. Then I proceeded to cut it out. We are going to be cutting this pattern on fold. The neckline part of this pattern is going to be on fold. Okay, so I went ahead to pin the pattern paper down on the fabric, and because this shoulder part is going to have double twist, we're going to add extra allowance for that. If you don't add extra allowance, you would realize that this your shoulder part will not be enough. Okay, so normally we're supposed to add half-inch seam allowance at the top and half-inch below, but I'm going to add 1 inch extra to the half-inch at the top and 1 inch extra to the half-inch below, which implies that I'm going to be marking 1.5 inch at the top as my allowance and 1.5 inch below. Okay, and finally, at the armhole area, I'm going to be adding 0.5 inch, that's half-inch, okay, as the allowance at that point, and that is going to be very okay. After marking my allowance, I'm going to proceed to cut out. Okay, you'll be needing two pieces, one for the right shoulder and one for the left, so proceed to use the same steps to cut out the second piece. Okay, now I went ahead to stitch my 1/2 inch that I left at the armhole area. Okay, you're going to stitch it down and we're going to flip this to the right side after stitching, and that is exactly what I'm doing at this point. I'm going to go to my ironing table to also press it down so that it looks neat. Okay, I have also gone ahead to flip the hem area to the right side, and I have also ironed it, so you should have something like this when you're done flipping yours. At the beginning of this tutorial, we used our fabric pen to note all the slash and spread point. At this point, we're going to notch it so that we can transfer all the points to the other side because it's only on one side. So I'm going to go ahead now to use my scissors to notch all the points so that they appear on the other side as well. Next, I'll transfer all the points from the main fabric to the lining piece by notching as well. This is very important as we will be pleating this, so everything needs to be accurate. Okay, we will be pleating the main fabric and the lining piece separately. You should have 6 notches on each side of your fabric, and that 6 notches should give us 3 pleats. Okay, so in order to pleat these, I'm going to start from the center front area. I'm going to pleat from one notch to another notch. Okay, and I'm going to pin it down. So I started from the center front to pleat. You can start from anywhere and you can pleat to any direction. Okay, so for the second pleat, I'm also going to pleat from one notch to another notch. Okay, and I'm going to pin it down. For the last pleat, okay, which is the 5th and 6th notch, I'm going to pleat from one notch to the other notch as well, and that is the same thing I'm going to do for every piece, including the lining piece. You can see that we have 3 pleats just like I said, so I'm going to go ahead now to also pleat the lining and every other part. After pleating the remaining sides of camera, I'm going to head over to my sewing machine to hold the pleats down by stitching it, okay? After stitching the pleats, the next step will be to fix in our zipper, okay? And in order to fix in my zipper, I'm going to go to the zipper allowance area and I'm going to mark my 1 inch zipper allowance. Once I am done marking my zipper allowance on the right side, I'm also going to mark my zipper allowance on the left side. Then I will head over to my table to pin in the zipper on that allowance that I marked. At this point, I have gone ahead to pin in my zipper on the zipper allowance line, and I'm going to head over to my sewing machine to stitch the zipper on the allowance. Ensure that you are stitching the zipper on the main fabric only. Remove the lining. Ensure that the lining is not on the way at all. At this point, I am done fixing my zipper and I'm going to go ahead to open it up so that you see what it looks like. Remember, the lining should be out of the way, okay? So we're going to go ahead now to turn the lining, okay, for the zipper allowance. What you just need to do is to flip the lining over, right sides facing each other. The right side of the main fabric should face the right side of the lining, okay? So we are stitching at the wrong side. So what I'm going to do now is to pin the lining to the main fabric, okay? Like I said, right sides facing each other. After pinning the first side of the zipper, I'll proceed to pin the second side of the zipper. You know, the zipper has both the left and the right side, okay? So after pinning the second side of the zipper, I'll proceed to stitch, okay? Whilst stitching, I am not going to stitch too close to the zipper teeth. If you stitch too close to the zipper teeth, you will not be able to zip up or zip down your clothes. So stitch close enough, but not too close, okay? After closing the zipper area with the lining, the next thing will be to close the neckline. I mean the back neckline, okay? At this point, you will need to get your hemming gum because it's going to help the neckline relax better after we flip over and iron. You are going to turn the neckline with the lining using 0.5 inch allowance, okay? Just like we did for the zipper area, you're going to place the fabric right sides facing each other, okay, and stitch on the wrong side. The next step will be to trim off every excess allowance and notch, okay? Notch very carefully. After notching, carry out the same steps on the other side, okay? After doing all of that, the next step will be to attach the sleeves. The first thing I'm going to do is to place the sleeves right sides facing each other, okay? But one important thing I'm going to do is to mark out my 1/2 inch allowance that we added for joining our sleeve. That is where I'm going to place the sleeve. Do the same thing for the other side as well. That is very, very important, so that you have your allowance where you would attach your sleeve, okay? So I'm going to go ahead now to pin down the sleeves so they don't move at all, and I'm going to head over to my sewing machine and stitch them down. After stitching the sleeves down, the next step will be to turn the neckline with the lining, okay? So what I will do is to push in my sleeves and pin the lining to the main fabric. So I'm going to go ahead to put in the other sleeve as well and proceed to pin. After pinning, the next thing will be to head over to my sewing machine to turn my neckline, and I'm going to also use my hemming gum. The importance of the hemming gum is noticed when you flip your clothes to the right side and you iron. It just lays very, very flat. So it's important that you carry out the step with your hemming gum, okay? After stitching, the next step will be to notch, okay? Notch and even trim off any excess allowance if you please. I just notched, I didn't trim off at this point, okay? So the next step will be to flip it over and go to my ironing table, okay? I'm going to show you what it looks like after I have flipped it over and ironed, okay? From this point, you can see the importance of using your hemming gum. Flipped it over to the right side, I've ironed and everything lays perfectly, okay? The next step will be to twist the shoulders so that we can connect the front shoulder to the back shoulder, basically, okay? What I'm going to do is to twist the shoulder twice. I'm going to twist the first time and the second time, and I'm going to attach the front shoulder to the back shoulder, okay? So what I'm going to do is to place them right sides facing each other just like I'm showing you. Okay, then I'm going to use the lining piece to cover it. Just watch what I'm doing and please just follow the process. Okay, so I'm going to use the lining piece to cover up the front shoulder. Okay, and I'm going to pin it down. Okay, pinning it helps in the sense that when you go to your sewing machine, it doesn't move and you'll be able to stitch exactly where you want. Okay, so after pinning it down, I'm going to head over to my sewing machine and I will stitch on 0.5 inch allowance. I'll proceed to twist the second part as well. I'll twist it twice and I'm going to place the front and the back right sides facing each other, and I would use the lining to cover it basically and pin. The same thing I did for the front. So I'm going to head over to my sewing machine to also stitch this with 0.5 inch allowance. Okay, I have gone ahead to stitch and I have flipped to the right side, but there's one more thing I need to do. I'm going to open up that part that we stitched, can you see? And I'm going to trim off the area close to the shoulder. Just trim off that point because it's going to be too bulky. Basically, to reduce the bulk at that point, I opened the shoulder area and I notched or reduced the seam at that point, and that's it. At this point, our top is basically ready. Our zipper has been fixed, the shoulder has been joined together. You can see that we have a seamless finish, in there. The last thing I want to do is to just attach my sleeves. Okay, so just go ahead to attach your sleeves the way you normally would. And at this point, we've come to the end of this tutorial. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.